Let's look at table and entity level scripts now. Table and entity level scripts are defined under the customization objects for an entity. You'll find that there are 4 types of scripts available to you. So you can see this is when we come into administration, customization person, then down into the table level scripts area, and you can see that we can define them to 4 different types. But actually, we're going to discuss and see about usage of these. With the table level scripts, for example, can't block database actions, but they are very, very useful for changing and inserting data. And they're very useful, for example, when data has been inserted by a third-party system using the APIs, then table level scripts will still fire. I've got a note in here, please avoid using detached table level scripts. It's much better practice to use escalation rules in situations where you need delayed execution of business rules. So I'm not really going to be talking about that. I don't really want people to use those because there are better techniques to allow sort of detached behavior. Entity level scripts, though, they're very, very useful things. They can be set to be rollback if an error occurs. We're going to see that they only work in very particular circumstances, so they're only going to be bound to the screens for the company, person, email, and address. But let's explain the differences between these different types of scripts. Table and entity level scripts all use the idea of event functions. You can think of these event functions as a bit like database triggers. So that's an analogy for them there. And there you have then this idea of insert, post-insert, update, and delete. And I've defined here a very, very simple update record event for the company script. And so this is a table level script. Now, there are always going to be, if I've picked up all of the code there and put this into my little text editor, there's always going to be 4 event functions defined for any table level script. But you don't have to do anything with those scripts, so there's just, these are placeholders, these are empty templates. I've only updated the update record, but it is important to understand you have to always have these 4 events in there. So they don't have to do anything, but they have to be accounted for. So there's insert record, there's post insert record, there's update record, and delete record. Always 4 actions, all 4 event functions in each script, even though you may only use one of those. Now if I show you this in action, so this has been defined against the company. If I change the data in the main company screen, then the rule is going to fire. So it's detected the change. Now, please note that it hasn't interrupted the commit process. So what we know is that something like a table level script does not interrupt the commit process. So, but what about when you're working with a custom screen? You can see I've come into a screen that I've written for custom company screen box. It's a very simplified edit screen, and table level scripts work also in custom screens. They're not dependent on the interface. So if I switch this over into edit mode, I change some data and I choose to save, the record is going to be saved, and then the table level script is triggered and displays the message. So this is the same rule executed, however the change takes place. So it doesn't matter whether I have changed it in a system screen into a custom screen, or I could have done it through an API driven change, and the table level script would still fire. So these table level scripts are firing within the server as the data is changed. And if I was to change the script though to an entity level, you notice how what I've done here, I've changed the script type to now be entity level, and if I save that, we're going to find it's very different behavior. So the script is triggered as before on the company summary screen. So you can see there a company update record event has been triggered, but it won't fire in the custom screen. Now it doesn't fire in the custom screen because event level scripts have very, very distinct firing points. So they are very tightly bound to the interface. They're only applicable to, first of all, 4 entities: company, person, email, and address. So these are the core entities used for the definition of a contact. And the event functions that actually are used and available within a table level script and an entity level script differ as well. So let's look at the differences between these two. So table level scripts are available to all tables, that's including custom tables as well as secondary entities. So if you've added a new table for a project, for example, you know you can use table level scripts on those. You can't use entity level scripts on your custom entities. They can only work on the core contact tables, those 4 that I described. Plus, they work differently with the event functions. So a table level script works with a PostInsert record, update and delete record, whereas an entity level script will work with an insert record, update record and delete record. We'll look a little bit more about these in a moment. And then we've got this idea of a table level script has no rollback behavior at all, where an entity level script may work with rollback and so may interrupt the commit process. And if you think about that, then entity level scripts do actually become very, very useful. The real usefulness of entity level scripts is that because they're really designed for around the core contact tables, they're very useful, allowing us to roll back entries of contacts which would breach any complex validation. So that would allow us to use entity level script with rollback, and then used when we want to stop an action happening if there's a validation error or error within the script associated with data entry or data update for this complex type of screen. So this is a company entry screen. It is a complex screen, and it offers the ability for us to enter not just one table. It's not just dealing with a single table company, but it's also dealing with the entry of person information, address information, and phone and email information as well. And consequently, this is where we want to be able to come in and start thinking about how do we evaluate all of the information and use that in something like an entity level script. So our entity level scripts can validate the data that comes from all of these tables as they're being entered. And so the values and form value methods that read the inbound data actually have subtle differences. You've got these two methods that you can use to capture inbound data: values and form values. The values allows us to get hold of the data within fields associated with an individual screen. That's the entry block. So strictly speaking, that would be the data inside the company box long. So a script associated with that gets hold of that, and it can be used to build the edit screen for the current record. So editing a company record, you would use the company box long screen, and values allows you to get hold of any of the fields in that screen. The form values collection, however, allows access to the data from within the whole of the HTML form being submitted. That means when you're dealing with a screen like the new company screen, when you're actually inserting data into several tables, company, person, and address, you can access any of the submitted data by using the form values. So form values allows you to get hold of that. It doesn't matter if you're writing the script as an entity level script on the company, you can still get hold of the address information using form values. But tabular scripts do come into their own really when you're thinking about editing data. So table level scripts can't interrupt the commitment of a record. Nevertheless, they're probably the most useful type of script to cascade changes in a system. We can think of this as the manipulation of data. So these are very much for manipulative rules. Imagine you had a customer who had the requirement that when a company was reassigned to a different account manager, then the opportunities that belong to that company that was still in progress. So here should be automatically be reassigned to the new company account manager. So imagine here you are dealing with an employee and dealing with data that may well be managed by originally Susan May. You want to reassign it to Brian Little, then every opportunity that is associated with this company is suddenly reassigned and belongs to Brian Little. Now this can be accomplished by using an update event function in a table level script. And the line that detects a change in the company account manager is where we've got the if crm.getContextInfo company comp primary user ID does not equal values comp primary user ID. So we're using our knowledge that the get context info, and that will always get the original database value of the field, whereas the values method grabs the new value being submitted from the interface. And obviously if the two are different, then a change has taken place. And then the rest of the code there loops through the opportunities that belong to the company and reassigns them to the new user. Now occasionally we need to be able to correct data that's being submitted to bring it within tolerance. An example of this may be where somebody has chosen a customer credit limit level that's too high, and we need to change this to the maximum allowed value based on the customer's current outstanding orders. We can make this change using table level scripts. And table level scripts allow us to look at any of the existing data within the system and implement the business rules that we need. The key thing that enables us to bring data within tolerance is that the values collection in the table level scripts is addressable. That means we can not only read from using the values method, the submitted data, we can actually address it and write to it. We can edit values as well. We can change or overwrite the inbound values to what we need them to be. Another example where we may need to ensure that the opportunity is reassigned from a user to a team. So have a look at this example where I might be changing the assignment of this opportunity to a different user, and I seem to have the ability to choose a different team as well. What you want to do is to make sure that the team actually is the default team for William Dolan, this particular user. You don't want to allow people to reassign it to a completely different team which that person doesn't belong to. So we need to get around the problem of users reassigning opportunities against incorrect teams but correct users. So we could use an update rule to do this. And this is using the idea of the addressable field. Okay, so the trick here again is spotting when the assigned user is changed, and that's the get context info method returning the originally assigned user, and the values collection contains the inbound, or the values method allows us to access the inbound user ID, and if they're different then the record has been changed, and if that's changed you can see where it's got values oppo channel ID equals user record dot user primary channel ID. So the first is the test. The second line, where we've got var user record equals crm.find record, is retrieving the information for the user to whom the record has just been assigned, and then the values is set by taking the channel ID for that user and writing it into the oppo channel ID field. Some other mechanisms that we have to think about is the insert record and post insert record event functions. There are two insert event functions available to you within table and entity level scripts. Insert record, this is really only useful for our entity level scripts. This event fires as the record is created, but before the database is inserted. Therefore, the new unique ID for the record is unknown, but because it takes place before the database insert, this is very much where you can use this for the rollbacks for the entity level scripts. PostInsert record. PostInsert record is an interesting challenge to us, because if you will have a script that assigns just after the record has been inserted, one of the things is that we don't have access to actually is the newly created ID. You might think that you could use crm.getContextInfo, but because the record is new and it's not in context at the moment of insertion, then we don't actually have the getContextInfo. So that's one of the odd things that we have there. So we don't know that. We can't access a newly created record's information through getContext. Neither can we neither can we access it through the values method, because values collects the data that is passed into the system from the browser. But if it's been created within the server, we don't have that. The ID is not passed into the system. What we use instead is another keyword called where clause. So inside a PostInsert record function, you can obtain the newly created record ID by using a system variable called where clause. It's always going to be in the form of a name-value pair, so it's going to be in the idea of data ID equals value. So if it's newly created, it will contain comp_company ID equals 1502. The idea is that it's going to contain the primary key value as a name-value pair, and that allows us to find the record that we can use. There are lots of examples of this on the community, so do have a look at the use of PostInsert record on the community. And over the last few videos that we've been creating, we've used different system variables. Some of these are very useful, like current user object is a variable. There is an object that exists both server side and client side. Others only exist within the server. So validate, error string, where clause are system variables that can only be used inside the server, and they're used in whatever type of script that we're using. And the values and form values are accessible again through server-side scripts. They're the passed-in values. Now, the where clause is special because we don't use them in create and validate scripts because their referencing is provided through getContext, the contextual information, or the values method as it comes in. So it's only table level scripts that are using the where clause. That wraps up what I wanted to talk about with table level scripts